The Ottoman palace guards had a secret mixture they used to stay awake throughout the night. But what nobody realized was that this ancient concoction was actually the first version of something millions of people drink every morning today. Hello, dear history traveler. Before we uncover this fascinating secret and embark on a journey through the noble traditions of Ottoman night guards, if you love historical mysteries, don't forget to like this video. And if these stories help you drift into peaceful sleep, consider subscribing. Share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always a wonderful experience to see our global community of night owls and history lovers. People joining this historical journey from different corners of the world at the same time connects us, just like those guards who united the vast territories of the Ottoman Empire. Now dim your lights, get comfortable, and let's travel back in time together. ... Picture this: Constantinople, known today as Istanbul, the year 1540. The sun has just set on the horizon, casting purple and golden hues over the Bosphorus. The sky transforms as if a painter dipped their brush in water and gently swept across the canvas, shifting from blue to purple, from purple to deep indigo. A gentle breeze from the sea, salty and cool, wanders through the city's narrow streets. The last cries of seagulls can be heard from afar, giving way to the silent flutter of bat wings. Which Ottoman Sultan do you think was on the throne during this period? If you're curious about the answer, share your guesses in the comments. Here's a hint. This was one of the Ottoman Empire's most glorious eras, and the Sultan had made great conquests in both the east and west. In the Grand Bazaar, merchants are closing their shops, the sounds of bargaining with final customers gradually fading. The sound of iron shutters coming down, the jingle of locks, the creak of wooden doors. Each announces the end of the day. Oil lamps are being lit along the narrow streets. Lamplighters with their long poles light the wall-mounted lamps one by one. As each lamp ignites, the streets glow with yellow-orange light. Light seeping from house windows casts dancing shadows on the stone-paved roads. As darkness falls, the sounds of the city change too. The daytime noise, vendors' calls, the clatter of horse carriages, hammer strikes, gives way to the softer sounds of night. A ney flute can be heard from afar, perhaps from a dervish lodge. Cats begin appearing in the streets, claiming the night. Dogs gather in groups, preparing to guard their territories. As families gather for evening meals, scents rising from homes spread into the streets. Onion, garlic, meat, spices. Each home has its unique aroma. Children's cheerful voices rise from courtyards, mixing with their mother's gentle tones. Fathers shed the day's fatigue, perhaps sipping a cup of sherbet. But within the massive walls of Topkapi Palace, a completely different world is preparing to awaken. These are no ordinary walls, each built from carefully selected stones, joined with mortar, constructed to withstand centuries. The thickness of these walls reaches several meters in some places. This thickness was designed not just for physical protection, but also to keep sounds and secrets inside. By the way, do you know who had Topkapi Palace built? Right after the conquest of Istanbul in the 1460s, it was commissioned by Fatih Sultan Mehmet. Fatih didn't like the location of the old Byzantine palace, and instead chose Sarabonu, one of the city's most beautiful spots. This location commanded views of both the Bosphorus and the Golden Horn. Fatih Sultan Mehmet designed the palace not just as a living space, but as the administrative center of the empire. Every courtyard, every building, every room served a specific purpose. This world, the world of night guards, the silent protectors of the Ottoman Empire's beating heart. As twilight fades, you walk through the outer courtyard. The stones beneath your feet have been polished by centuries of footsteps. Each stone seems to tell a story. The hurried steps of messengers rushing in the early morning hours, the dignified walk of slowly pacing viziers, the quick steps of bustling servants. The massive gates that welcome thousands during the day are now sealed. These are no ordinary doors, made from thick oak, reinforced with iron, each one a work of art. The bolts are bronze and iron, so heavy that a single man struggles to move them. The locks, too, are special, designed by Ottoman craftsmen, containing complex mechanisms inside, security systems nearly impossible to break. The men guarding these gates are no ordinary soldiers. These are elite guards, the Kapikulu troops. But who were these Kapikulu? Kapiulu means slave of the Sultan's gate, and refers to the salaried soldiers directly bound to the Sultan. These weren't men gathered from villages, forcibly conscripted. No, these were carefully selected, trained professionals, educated not just in the art of war, but also in literature, mathematics, even art. Each received a regular monthly salary, a revolutionary system for that era. Every 3 months, they would receive their salary called uluf in the Sultan's presence, in a grand ceremony. The first thing you notice is the silence. But this is no ordinary silence. A silence that strains your eardrums, with an almost physical presence. Such a silence that you can hear your own heartbeat, feel the blood flowing through your veins. This is a silence, like the alert stillness of predators waiting in darkness. Just like the deep, calculated waiting of a lion observing its prey. The night guards have learned to read the darkness. For them, darkness is not an enemy, but an ally. Every shadow's angle tells them something. Did someone pass here? When did they pass? Which direction did they go? Every sound's tone is a piece of information. Is this footstep familiar or foreign? Is someone in a hurry? Are they hiding? Even scents are clues for them. Which concubine does this perfume belong to? Which guard's weapon does this oil smell come from? Is this spice aroma from the kitchen or somewhere else? Approaching the second gate, Baba Salam, you encounter the first layer of the guard system. Baba Salam means gate of greeting. This is not just a physical passage, but also where protocol begins. After this gate, you're in the Sultan's private world. Here the tone of conversation changes. Walking pace slows, heads bow. On either side of the gate stand guards motionless, as if carved from marble. But looking carefully, you realize these aren't statues. Their chests rise and fall slightly. Their eyes are alive and tracking every movement. This stillness isn't easy. It's the result of years of training. To stand for hours without moving, ignoring muscle pain, not even scratching an itch ... This isn't willpower. This is discipline. Their long robes in special colors denoting their units seem to absorb the moonlight. Dark blue belongs to the Haseki guards, green to the Solaks, burgundy to the Paiks. Each color has a meaning, each embroidery a story. The fabrics are special too, woven from Bursa silk, both magnificent and functional. They make no sound when moving, don't absorb sweat, but also serve as light armor. These men protect the soul of an empire. Each has come to this duty with a different story. Some from Anatolian mountain villages, perhaps from Kastamonu, perhaps from Erzurum. Discovered there while herding sheep, their intelligence and courage noticed. Some from the Balkans, from Bosnia's forests, from Albania's mountains. Some from the Caucasus, from Circassian tribes, from Georgian valleys. But all are here now for one purpose, to protect the Sultan and the palace. As you progress into the palace, you realize how complex the security system is. These aren't randomly placed guards. It's a system created through centuries of experience, planned with mathematical precision. Every point is watched from at least 2 different angles. There are no blind spots. The moment you leave one guard's field of vision, you enter another's. Now, let's come to that secret mixture I mentioned. Staying awake all night isn't just about willpower. The human body has a natural rhythm. When night falls, body temperature drops, heart rate slows, the brain begins producing sleep hormones. Resisting this natural cycle isn't easy. Ottoman guards had to find a way to overcome this natural need for sleep. And what they found was a discovery that would change the world. In the guard quarters, hidden from curious eyes, there was a special room. This room was different from the others. Its walls covered with soot stains accumulated over years. The air filled with a sharp but pleasant aroma. The stone floor worn from years of use. A large brazier in the center. Around the brazier, sitting like a temple priest, an old guard, that night's chief coffee maker. This room isn't just a kitchen. It's almost a sacred space. Not everyone can enter here. Only trusted guards, and only at special times. The copper sieves hanging on the walls each tell a story. This one from the time of Yavuz Sultan Selim, that one from Suleiman's era. The large bronze mortar in the corner, perhaps 100 years old. Thousands of nights' worth of coffee ground in them, their metal surfaces polished, gleaming. The night watch commander would enter here after sunset and begin preparations. But this is no ordinary preparation. It's almost a religious ritual. First, hands are washed, not just for cleanliness, but for sanctity. Then a short prayer is said. Every task begins with Bismillah. The brazier is checked. The fire must be neither too hot nor too dim. Oak charcoal burning at just the right temperature. The main ingredient was coffee beans that Arab merchants brought with great effort from Yemen. The story of these beans alone is an epic. Beans carefully gathered from coffee trees growing in Yemen's mountains would be loaded onto camels, brought first to Mecca, then to Istanbul, on journeys lasting months. Each caravan battled dangers like rain, desert heat, bandits. This is why coffee was so valuable that it was stored in the palace's special warehouses, in locked chests. Each sack was sealed, every use recorded. The preparation process was a ritual, every stage predetermined, rules formed over centuries. First, the beans would be sorted by hand. The chief coffee maker would take the beans in his palm, examining each one. Damaged ones, moldy ones, misshapen ones would be separated. This wasn't just quality control, but also a meditation. Touching each bean, feeling its energy, preparing for the night's challenges. Then the roasting would begin. The copper pan would be placed over the brazier, but the beans wouldn't be added immediately. The pan would first be heated empty. The right temperature was critical. Too hot and the beans would burn, too cold and they wouldn't roast evenly. The chief coffee maker would hold his hand over the pan, feeling the heat. Experienced hands never erred. They knew the perfect temperature. When the beans were poured into the pan, the room would suddenly transform. The first aromas would begin to rise. Not yet coffee, more of a green, raw smell. The chief coffee maker would begin stirring the beans with a long-handled wooden spoon. This stirring wasn't ordinary, rhythmic, regular, but also ensuring each bean received equal heat. The other guards in the room would watch silently. This was also a moment of education. Young guards would learn the subtleties of roasting, how the sound changes. First silence, then light crackling, then the first crack. How the color changes, from greenish gray to yellow, from yellow to light brown, then to the perfect chocolate brown. How the aroma changes, from raw greenness to bread-like, then to that mystical coffee aroma. The roasting would take about 15 minutes. During this time, the chief coffee maker's eyes wouldn't leave the beans. Just as a master sculptor sees the statue within the marble, he saw the perfect coffee within the beans. At exactly the right moment, not a second early, not a second late, the pan would be removed from the fire. This was the medium roast, called city roast. Too light and the coffee would be weak and sour. Too dark, and it would taste bitter and burnt. The roasted beans would immediately be poured into another container and shaken to cool. This was a critical moment. The beans continue roasting with their internal heat, and if not cooled immediately, they would burn. The cooling process was also an art. Cooled too quickly, they would crack. Too slowly, they would burn. Ideal cooling was natural, shaking the beans in the air. While the beans cooled, The large bronze mortar would be prepared. Each guard unit had its own mortar. It was a matter of pride. The Janissaries mortar was the largest, bearing the symbols of their corps. The Solak's mortar was more elegant, the Hasekis the most ornate. But all served the same purpose, perfect grinding. When the grinding began, another ritual would start. This time, not just the chief coffee maker, but several selected guards would grind together. Each would take position at a mortar, grasping their pestles. They would begin on command, rhythmic, harmonious, almost like music. Thud, dot, 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 dot. The sound of the mortar would echo through the quarters, announcing to guards in other sections that coffee time had come. Each strike mattered. Hit too hard and the coffee would taste burnt. Too soft, and it wouldn't grind evenly. The ideal grind was slightly coarser than sand, much coarser than flour. Achieving this consistency required experience. Young guards would practice for months before being deemed worthy of this sacred duty. The grinding process would take about 20 minutes. During this time, the rhythm of strikes would never break. This wasn't just physical activity, but also mental preparation. Each strike was preparing for the night's challenges, each strike gathering strength to stay awake. Sometimes, between strikes, old guards would tell stories from past nights. One night, an old Janissary would say, swinging his pestle, "At exactly this hour the palace was under siege. Enemies had reached the foot of the walls. We were preparing our coffee, just like now. Suddenly, the alarm bells began to ring, but we didn't panic. We finished our coffee, then went to battle. That night, we repelled the enemy. In the morning, the Sultan asked us, 'How could you remain so calm?' We said, 'We had drunk our coffee, Your Majesty.' From that day, the Sultan ordered, 'The guard's coffee must never run out.' When grinding was complete, it was time for brewing. The water was already ready, drawn from Sarabonu's special wells, rested at perfect temperature. They said this water had special properties. Lighter than other waters, sweeter, bringing out coffee's aroma better. Modern science can explain why water's mineral content directly affects coffee's taste. Very hard water gives a bitter taste. Very soft water remains bland. Water would be heated in copper cauldrons. Fire control was critical. Water wouldn't be boiled, just heated until it was eye to eye. That is, when tiny bubbles began appearing on the surface, it would immediately be removed from heat. This temperature was about 90 degrees, less than boiling point, but hot enough to release coffee's aromas. Ground coffee would be distributed into sezvs. Each sezv was for 4 cups, and 1 spoon of coffee would be added per cup. But these spoons were special too, made for exact measurement, each taking the same amount. A standard measuring system had been established. 1 coffee spoon held about 7 grams of coffee. Even adding coffee to water had technique. First, it would be sprinkled on the water's surface, allowed to sink naturally, then stirred slowly with a wooden spoon. Never metal. Metal would impart taste, stirring in a figure-8 pattern. This motion ensured coffee distributed evenly throughout the water. The sezvs would be arranged on the brazier, and brewing would begin. When the first foaming came, which took about 3 minutes, the sezv would be quickly but carefully removed from heat. The foam would be collected with a spoon and distributed into cups. This foam was considered the coffee's face. Coffee without foam was incomplete. Then the sezv would return to heat, awaiting the second foaming. This process would be repeated 3 times. But the secret wasn't just in the coffee. The Ottoman Guard's special mixture contained other ingredients. First, cardamom. Green cardamom pods would be lightly crushed and added to the coffee. Cardamom not only provided a pleasant aroma, but also aided digestion, freshening breath so guards could breathe easily throughout the night. Cardamom also had a mild stimulant effect, clearing the mind and increasing concentration. Then came cinnamon. Not powder, but cinnamon sticks. Ceylon cinnamon was preferred, sweeter and more aromatic than Chinese cinnamon. Broken into small pieces, one piece would be added to each seive. Cinnamon warms the body from within, accelerates blood circulation. This was very important on cold nights. Cinnamon was also known to balance blood sugar, critical for maintaining energy levels throughout the night. Sometimes on special nights saffron would be added. Saffron was the world's most expensive spice, more valuable than gold by weight. About 150 flowers are needed for 1 gram of saffron, and these flowers are hand-picked only at certain times of year, in early morning hours. Just a few threads of saffron would give the water a golden yellow color and mystical aroma. But saffron's real value is different. It creates a mild feeling of happiness, lifts morale, lightens the psychological burden of night duty. The most interesting additive was ambergris. Ambergris, formed in the sperm whale's digestive system and washed ashore after floating in the sea for years, was an extremely rare substance. Fresh ambergris smells bad, but after years at sea, transforms into a magnificent aroma. Besides its unique scent, ambergris was said to slow caffeine absorption in coffee, thus extending its effect. Only coffee prepared for the Sultan as special guards would have ambergris added. This was both a privilege and sign of loyalty. When the coffee was ready, the serving ceremony would begin. The first cup would always be presented to the most senior guard. This wasn't just a sign of respect, but also security protocol. If there was a problem with the coffee, spoilage, poison, or other abnormality, he would be the first to notice. The senior guard would take the cup, first smell it, then take a small sip. No one would drink until he nodded approval. When approval came, cups would be distributed in order of seniority. The youngest guard would receive last. This too is a lesson. Patience, respect, hierarchy. The cups were small, no bigger than an egg. This was for both practical and scientific reasons. Small cups prevent coffee from cooling. Hot coffee is more effective. Also, drinking small amounts allows doses to be adjusted throughout the night. Drinking too much coffee at once can cause heart palpitations, restlessness, even hallucinations. The way of drinking coffee was also important. It would be drunk standing. Sitting leads to relaxation, relaxation to sleep. In small sips, feeling the taste on the palate. Each sip would be held in the mouth briefly. All the coffee's aromas felt, then slowly swallowed. This wasn't just drinking coffee, it was meditation. While drinking they would talk, but voices were low, respectful. Watch reports would be shared. I saw suspicious movement at the east gate. Checked it, it was a cat. There's a strange sound in the treasury corridor. Couldn't find the source. Light was coming from the Grand Vizier's room until late. Every piece of information was important, would be noted. Old guards would sometimes tell stories from the past. In the time of Yavuz Sultan Selim, one would begin. One night at exactly this hour, Safavid spies were caught. They were trying to enter through the palace roof. As the story continued, young guards would listen carefully, memorizing every detail. These stories weren't entertainment, but education. When the coffee break ended, guards would return to their duties in groups. But now they were more refreshed, more alert, more motivated. The psychological effect of the ritual was as important as the physical effect of coffee. You're not alone. You have comrades. There's tradition. This feeling gives strength. The Ottoman palace guard system was built on a complex hierarchy. Each group had its own specific duties, authorities, traditions. This system hadn't formed randomly. It had been shaped by centuries of experience, lessons learned from countless threats and attacks. At the top were the Haseki guards. What does Haseki mean? Has means special. Eki is a suffix indicating belonging, so those special to the Sultan. These men were the Sultan's most trusted protectors. Their number was limited to 40, not one more, not one less. Each had given at least 10 years of flawless service, spoke multiple languages, and had proven loyalty repeatedly. Below the Hasekis were the Solak guards. What does Solak mean? Very interesting. It means standing on the left side. They got this name because they walked on the Sultan's left side during ceremonies. But why the left side? Because the right side belonged to the Grand Vizier and other state dignitaries. The left side was the protection side. Most assassins used their right hand, attack from the left. Solaks were the palace's most athletic guards. Physical characteristics like height, strength, agility were prioritized in selection. Paik guards were the palace messengers. What does paik mean? This Persian origin word means revolving around, carrying news. Just as planets revolve around the sun, paiks revolved around the palace, carrying messages. But these weren't ordinary messengers. A paik would memorize the palace's entire architecture. Thousands of rooms, hundreds of corridors, dozens of secret passages. They would keep the location, size, characteristics of all in their minds. The Silaflu Baltasilar were responsible for external security. Their name is interesting. Zuluv means hair braid. Baltaki means axe bearer. Long hair braids would hang to their shoulders. This was their distinguishing feature. Why hair braids? It's hard to distinguish friend from foe in darkness, but long hair braids allowed recognition by touch. The Baltasilar's weapon wasn't just the axe. They were famous for their giant stature and strength. And of course, the most famous were the Janissaries. What does Janissary mean, and who were they? Meaning new soldier. Janissaries were the Ottomans' most famous military unit. They consisted of children taken from Christian families through the Devshirm system. These children would be separated from their families, introduced to Islam, receive the best education, and be raised as soldiers bound to the Sultan with absolute loyalty. The Janissary system may seem cruel, but it was revolutionary for its time. These children who would have remained peasants became the empire's most powerful men. When the evening call to prayer was recited, the night watch would begin. This wasn't just a shift change, but almost a sacred transfer of duty. As day guards made their final rounds, checking every corner, every shadow one last time, night guards would complete their preparations. Each guard would first perform ablutions. This wasn't just a religious obligation, but also mental and physical preparation. As cold water touched face, hands, feet, the day's fatigue would wash away, the mind would clear. Prayers said during ablution would give spiritual strength for the challenging night ahead. Uniforms would be donned carefully. Each piece would be checked. Any tears, missing buttons, stains? The uniform wasn't just clothing, but identity and honor. Weapons, too, would be checked one by one. The sword would be drawn from its sheath, checked for rust, its sharpness tested. When the sun had completely set, the changing ceremony would begin. This ceremony followed rules unchanged for centuries. Day and night guards would stand side by side, keeping watch together for a time. During this period, information would be transferred. Today, the Grand Vizier left early, seemed uneasy. Unusual sounds came from the harem, but I found nothing when I investigated. A foreign merchant was wandering near the East Gate. Be careful. Every detail, every observation would be shared. When the change was complete, day guards would depart ceremonially. Night guards were now the palace's protectors. First task was to familiarize themselves with their areas. Each guard would walk through his assigned section from end to end, establishing the normal state. The first hours were usually quiet. The palace hadn't yet fully fallen asleep. Servants finishing final tasks, kitchen staff preparing for the next day, scribes completing final correspondence. During these hours, guards would be careful but relaxed. As night progressed, the palace would fall silent. This is when the real challenge began. Staying alert in silence, watching in darkness, not succumbing to monotony. These weren't easy. Guards would use various techniques, light exercises, mental games, silent prayers. Toward midnight, time would come for the first coffee break. This break wasn't just for rest, but also for information sharing, morale refreshing, strengthening unit spirit. Guards would gather in the designated coffee room. When the coffee ceremony began, the room would take on a mystical atmosphere. The brazier's fire would dance, coffee's aroma would fill the air. Guards would silently take their places, waiting for the ritual to begin. These moments were considered sacred. When coffee was ready and distributed, conversation would begin. But this wasn't ordinary conversation. Experienced guards would share their knowledge. Young guards would ask questions. How do we know if a sound behind a door is dangerous? How do we track someone moving in darkness? Every question would be answered, every answer explained with examples. When the coffee break ended, guards would return to their duties renewed. The second half of the night was beginning. These hours were more difficult, body tired, mind inclined to sleep. But with coffee's effect and high morale, these difficulties would be overcome. 2 to 4 o'clock were critical hours. During these hours, attention had to be maintained at the highest level. Throughout history, most attacks had occurred at these hours. Enemies would think guards would be most tired, most inattentive. Ottoman guards had managed to reverse this expectation. Special protocols would be applied during these hours. Patrol frequency would increase. Extra guards would be placed at critical points. Weapons would be held loosely so they could be drawn quickly. Hallucinations would begin at these hours. Tired eyes see movement in motionless shadows. Tired ears hear sounds that aren't there. Experienced guards knew this was normal and would warn young guards in advance. Around 4 in the morning, time would come for the second coffee. This time, there was no ceremony. In small groups, coffee would be drunk quickly. This coffee was stronger. More coffee, less water. Black pepper would be added for sudden alertness. As dawn broke, the palace would begin coming alive again. First roosters would crow. Birds would begin chirping. The eastern horizon would brighten. For guards, this meant both relief and new danger. Changing light conditions created new risks. Final rounds would be made with great care. Everything would be checked. Everything that happened during the night noted. Reports would be prepared, organized for transfer to day guards. When morning prayer was called, night would have ended. But the guard's duty wasn't finished yet. Watch would continue until day guards arrived. The changing ceremony was the same as evenings, but in reverse. This time night guards would transfer information. Day guards would listen. When the transfer was complete, night guards could finally leave duty. Tired but proud. Another night survived, the empire safe for another day. The coffee ritual discovered by Ottoman guards didn't remain within palace walls. Over time, it spread first to palace members, then to the public. In the mid-16th century, the first coffee houses opened in Istanbul. These venues weren't just places to drink coffee, but became centers of social life. Interestingly, the spread of coffee houses worried some sultans. People would gather here discussing state affairs, gossiping, even opposing. During Murad, the fourth time coffee houses were banned. But the ban didn't work. Coffee had already become indispensable to the people. Ottoman merchants also took coffee to Europe. Coffee houses opened in Venice, Vienna, Paris. Each culture adapted coffee to its taste. Italians invented espresso, French café au lait. But Turkish coffee maintained its original form. Coffee, one of the world's most consumed beverages today, began in those Ottoman guards' nights. Every morning, millions of people start their day with coffee. CEOs before meetings, students while studying, workers starting shifts, all unknowingly continuing that old tradition. Modern security systems also learned much from Ottoman guards. The layered security concept, external security, internal security, special security, comes directly from the Ottoman system. Cross-checking, continuous patrol, the importance of the human element, these are still valid.
No matter how much technology advances, it can't replace the trained human eye. There are cameras, sensors, alarms, but the one interpreting them, making decisions, is still human. The greatest lesson Ottoman guards taught: real security comes not from technology, but from people. This heritage lives on in Turkish culture. The word beki still carries special meaning. Neighborhood watchmen patrol at night, keeping tempo with their sticks. This sound still gives confidence. Someone is awake for us. Someone is protecting us. In modern Turkey, the private security sector is large, but its roots go back to antiquity. Training methods, discipline understanding, hierarchy system, all bear traces of that Ottoman tradition. Coffee culture also lives and develops. Turkish coffee was added to UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage List. Because it's not just a beverage, but a tradition, a ritual. Coffee fortune-telling, groom's coffee, mira tradition, ... All traces remaining from those old days. Modern coffee chains, barista culture, third-wave coffee makers, ... All carry the legacy of those first coffee makers. Coffee preparation remains an art. Its presentation, a ceremony. Drinking it, a social activity. And perhaps most importantly, coffee is still a tool for staying awake. Doctors on night shift, 24-hour market workers, security guards, Uber drivers, all fighting the same battle as those Ottoman guards, against sleep. As you prepare to sleep tonight, think. The light from your window, the security camera on the street, your apartment's doorman, ... All modern versions of that old tradition. Someone is awake for your safety, and tomorrow morning sip your first coffee. In that ordinary seeming cup is centuries of history. Empires rose and fell, technologies changed, the world became completely different. But that coffee is still the same. Awakening, empowering, uniting. Perhaps pause and think for a moment. Drinking this coffee, you're actually becoming part of history. In every sip, there's courage, sacrifice, tradition. You too are part of that great story. This is the story of the Ottoman Night Guards. That secret mixture we began with wasn't just coffee. That mixture was actually one of humanity's oldest stories, sacrificing oneself to protect others. Being light in darkness, feeling safe even while sleeping. Now you can slowly close your eyes, take a deep breath. Perhaps you'll hear a watchman's whistle from afar, perhaps a security guard's radio. Perhaps you'll hear only silence, but know that silence isn't empty. Someone is protecting that silence. Peaceful sleep, dear listener. And remember, when you wake in the morning, your coffee will be waiting for you, just as it has been for centuries, because some traditions never end. They only change form. They say history repeats itself. Perhaps they're right, but some repetitions are beautiful. Every night, someone keeps watch. Every morning, people wake with coffee. And life goes on. Sweet dreams.